Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining my session. Um, as our host mentioned, my name is Krilona Pillay, and I am an Education to Workforce Program Manager at AWS. I am joining you from Johannesburg, South Africa. And today I'm going to be talking to you about overcoming barriers to success. So I know this sounds quite different from most of the technical sessions that some of you have been attending, but I hope that this session can assist in your journey towards moving towards a career in technology. A little bit about myself, though my topic might not be technical, I do come from a technical background as well. So I studied software development when I finished school, and I started my career as an educator as well, teaching technology subjects like software development and computer infrastructure. But I spent most of my career within the IT technology, working with institutions, with government and business as well on workforce development programs, looking at how to support students to develop technical skills and how skills in technology can assist in entering into employment opportunities. But looking at our topic today, what I wanted to achieve out of this and the aim of this session is to share with you some of the common barriers that students and people in general face, whether it's during their academic years or when pursuing job opportunities or while progressing when they are already in careers. All of us face obstacles and barriers that limit us from reaching our full potential and from achieving success. And at times, these barriers could be external and sometimes hard to control, but often these barriers are internal. And we need to find ways to identify these obstacles or barriers when they occur and try to overcome them or try to reduce their impact in limiting our success. So firstly, I think the one thing that we need to look at and figure out if we understand is what are barriers and what are obstacles? Are they the same or are they something that are different? And I think what happens is often we use these words interchangeably, but they are different. So obstacles are usually things that you can pass easily. Things like think about hurdles that are on a track or something that's fallen in your path that you can pick up and move and continue walking or continue to drive on the road. Whereas a barrier is something that's slightly different. So a barrier, think about as like a brick wall that comes in front of you that you need to either climb over or that's quite hard to break through. And these things block your path. These things are things that come in our way that are hard to overcome or hard to move past. And sometimes people can pass a barrier. Sometimes these barriers can actually limit us from achieving success. And many times people would look back and say, you know what, this is something that I've faced in my life and is something that's actually stopped me from reaching my full potential or from achieving a goal that I set out for myself when I was younger. And I could have done things differently, or I should have seen this, now I see it, but sometimes it's late and sometimes time has passed and we've missed opportunities to have achieved more by the time we noticed that there was a barrier in our way. So let's look at what some of these barriers are. And I want to take you through a few of the common barriers that people see or people notice are barriers for them. And these could be relevant for some of you, or these could be relevant for people that you know that you can help to support to overcome these barriers. And the first one that many people experience, and you might call it something different, or people might term it in different ways. But the first most common barrier is something which we call the fear of uncertainty or not knowing something. Now, this is the most common fear that people face when they need to make a decision or when they need to take some form of action. And what happens is we become anxious thinking of the outcome of taking this action. What we do is we often need to go and take on a new project. We need to maybe choose a subject. We need to sometimes put forward an idea to colleagues or to friends that are working on a project, to our lecturer or educator. It could be when we are maybe wanting to think about asking a girl or boy out on a date. We have fear of what the possible outcome could be. Maybe we're thinking about negative things that could possibly happen if we take that action or if we make a suggestion or put forward this idea. So nature has built this into our brains since the time of our ancestors, from the caveman times. What would happen is they would hear like a ruffling sound in the bushes, and they would immediately start to run or start to hide from fear that that noise might be a predator, or might be an animal coming to attack them, or might be another person coming to harm them. And we still respond in the same way, even though centuries have come and gone and we no longer face such risks in nature. We still have carried on these fears. And till today, when we plan to take a risk or when we plan to make a decision, we automatically induce this fear of uncertainty. What if there could be something bad that happens to us? So, what are some of the ways that we could look at overcoming this fear of uncertainty? So let me try and make some possible suggestions. So there are some ways that we could overcome this fear, or we could look at this not being a barrier for us, this not being something that limits us from moving forward and making those decisions that could help us achieve our goals. And this could be in your personal life, this could be towards your educational career, this could be when you are already at the workplace and you need to make that step or take that step forward to move into another direction or to advance your career at a next level. So, firstly, we need to think about what is the cost impact of that response, of the fear of uncertainty. So, what are we doing when we face that fear? Now we're uncertain, we're worried about the things that we don't know. So, uncertainty, obviously, it means that we don't know something. So, what do we do when we face that uncertainty? And what is the cost of not doing something, or the action that we take when we feel uncertainty? Usually, what happens is we want to, we're thinking about something, we have an idea, we want to make a decision or take an action, but we're uncertain. So, what normal people would do in that case is they say things like, okay, I'll look at it later, or I'll come back to it because I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much is it going to cost me, or how long will it take, or what if something bad happens? What if somebody doesn't like it? What if I choose the wrong thing and then later on it's not going to work out well? So, all those uncertainties make us do things like postponing an action or not taking any action. So, we need to evaluate what is the cost of inaction and what is the cost of postponement versus taking an action with the uncertainty. And when you weigh out those things, you might realize that, you know what, the cost of taking an action without certainty might actually be worth more than losing that opportunity at this point in time. And sometimes when we unpack things that way, we realize that this fear that we have, this fear of uncertainty, might actually not be worth wasting time over. The cost actually of the lost opportunity is worth more. So, this is one of the ways that you can look at overcoming that fear. The next thing is to look at connecting with the bigger picture, which ties into the first two. When you look at the bigger picture of the outcome of your goal, the goal that you want to achieve by taking that action, whether it be the idea, whether it be asking the girl out on the date, or whatever that action might be, if you look at connecting with the bigger purpose and evaluating it that way versus the unknown or the uncertainty that you faced with at that moment in time, you might realize that your purpose or the goal that you want to achieve is also worth more than the fear of the uncertainty that you have. And oftentimes, people do things like procrastinate because of things like uncertainty. And that's what ties back to the topic of discussion today, which is barriers that we want to overcome. And we often see that when we hear stories from successful people, some of the entrepreneurs that have done well for themselves in their career, business owners, and people that have made great leaps ahead in terms of certain areas in business or in technology, some of their success stories might not really relate to a specific moment in time or a specific event, but it might be around things that they did every day, simple steps that they took every day that average people didn't do, ways that they were able to harness normal activities better than other average people, like fear of uncertainty, ways that they would act quickly when they saw opportunities, where Sometimes people take those things and those things become barriers for them. They don't make decisions fast. They're not able to realize opportunities quickly because of simple things like these things, like barriers with uncertainty, where they're unable to make decisions fast. So, connecting with your bigger purpose is one way of really moving forward past the fear of uncertainty. I can give you an example. If you look at the thing like maybe there's a competition, a talent competition, for example. Now, if you look at if I enter this talent competition, there could be prize money for 1 million rand. And if you don't win, what would happen? You might feel disappointed. You would have spent a little bit of time and effort practicing and you don't win 1 million rand. But if you do enter the competition and you win 1 million rand, you're now 1 million rand richer and you've won this competition, you're rich and you're famous. The only uncertainty that you had was of possibly losing. And the only loss would have been the time and the effort that you spent practicing and the feeling of disappointment. So, what are the odds of winning versus losing? And these are things that we tie into the cost of inaction, the cost of postponement, and the connection with the bigger purpose. Then the last thing that we look at is looking at reducing your uncertainty. So, what are ways that you can overcome this fear, and what are ways that you can reduce the uncertainty that you have so that you can move past this barrier? You can do things like talking to people that are experts within that area of whatever you're working on, finding out the answers to reduce the uncertainty, to reduce the unknowns that you have, that you are faced with, that are stopping you from moving forward. So try to reduce the uncertainty so that you can also at the same time reduce the fear that you have in that specific area. So let's move on to the next barrier that we faced with in order to achieve success. So this next one is quite a tricky one for me, and it's very complex when we look at instant gratification. So firstly, what is instant gratification? Basically, just a basic description is it's a desire to feel good or to feel happy or to feel pleasure without delay, to feel happy right now immediately. That's what instant gratification means. And while instant gratification can feel good in the moment, it can easily become a habit that slowly consumes more and more of your time and money. And before you know it, you've invested a significant amount of your time in a on a short-lived pleasure, while others have made progress towards their goals. And instant gratification could easily be things like overindulging in food, or alcohol, or gaming, or spending too much time watching TV. Um, and these types of things become very addictive for many people. Not everyone, but many people. So something like TV could become very addictive to one person. But something like playing video games could become addictive to another person. While for not for them, but somebody else, something like um, answering social media or WhatsApp messages on their phone could become very addictive. For another person, eating could be addictive. So there's many things that become addictive to people. While instant gratification doesn't necessarily mean being addictive to something, there's many other things that people get instantly gratified by. And often they don't seem harmless. They seem like completely natural things. But they are things that we do immediately because we feel happy to do those things immediately. But they start to consume a lot of your time, and you can easily become obsessed by these things. Many people are spend a lot of time doing things like online shopping. Many people spend a lot of time doing things like researching, using the internet for things that are not related to their goals. And what happens is this starts to consume your time. And after a while, you see, oh no, I haven't dedicated enough time to my studies, to a project that I want to be working on, to something that's related to my career. And now I don't have enough time to achieve my goal within the time that I set for myself. Something very interesting, just to make you think a little bit more about this barrier. Things like hitting the snooze button on your phone in the morning, every morning when you wake up, is instant gratification, making yourself feel happy right now. And we're all guilty of it, even myself. I've got an extra alarm for my alarm so that I can wake up at the time I need to wake up, because we know ourselves and we know that there's certain things that are not easy for us to do as human beings. But after a amount of time, you'll see or realize that time is being lost. And this is very connected to time and losing time. But we can realize that time is being lost because we spend it not able to control our willpower to dedicate it to the things that we want to do. And this very much ties into long term versus short term investment. How do we sacrifice in the short term to get the long term reward that we're after? And there's different ways that people need to look at how they can address that, and they need to look at areas of weakness for themselves. Different things are hard for different people to manage. So the key is to identify weak areas for yourself and look at how you can pick them up when you know that this is becoming a problem, and being able to then set those goals and reward yourself for certain things. So the one thing is that it doesn't mean that you need to stop doing things that make you happy. Being happy is part of life, and being unhappy makes it hard to achieve our goals as well. If you're not happy, you can't think clearly, you can't do things that are enable you to achieve your goals. So you have to have a decent balance when you're looking at things like instant gratification. We have to make ourselves happy, but we have to have reasonable limits. So let's look at some ways that we can overcome this. Firstly, we need to, like I said, have limits. We don't have to discard the things that make us happy or make life enjoyable, but we have to be conscious or aware of when we are overexpending our time on things that are becoming dangerous for or hampering us from achieving our goals. So set aside a schedule or um, a timetable towards how you're going to achieve your goal. How much time do you want to be spending on certain activities? Also, if you know that you have an area of weakness, so for example, spending too much time on your phone is a weakness, make sure that in the dedicated time towards achieving your goal, whether it's for studying or whether it's towards a certain project that you're working on, that you limit yourself from using your phone or playing video games or whatever it might be that distracts you from achieving your goal. Lock the phone up. Make sure that you are in control of whatever is giving you the instant gratification when you don't need to be doing that. So make sure that you are able to control yourself and put together measures that will help you to do that if you can't limit yourself on your own. The next thing is looking at delayed gratification. So there's different ways of doing this. You can look at, let's just say you have a problem with using your phone, or looking at social media. Some people spend a lot of time on things like Facebook and Instagram, and it takes them away from achieving their goal. If you feel that you have an urge and you want to look at your phone right now, you put a pause and you delay gratification, and you say to yourself, okay, I'm not going to look at it right now. I have a timer. I will do that in 2 hours' time. And the delayed gratification still helps you to get to do the thing that you want to do, but not right now. And it limits you from overindulging. And after a while, you'll see that it becomes habitual, that you'll start to delay gratification, and it takes away that habit of instant gratification. It gives you still the thing that you want to do, but it also helps you to control yourself and to incorporate those limits. Then people look at having something like a support buddy, like a friend. They build that system of support so that they can help to control themselves and have those limits in terms of what they do. Often you'll see that if it's something like video gaming, that there's a group of people that are doing these things together, and if they want to work together towards achieving goals and they have different goals, they can build that support system to say, listen, this is how we're going to do it. Or if it's things like people wanting to lose weight, they put together these support groups where they can help each other to achieve those goals. And it's helpful also to have somebody there to support you when you know that you're finding it challenging to do something. Something else that is also tied into instant gratification. And I'll just give you an example, because we in Africa, and we know that there are cultural things that make it challenging for us to achieve our goals, especially when it comes to time. I will give you an example, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody. In our culture, we have lots of functions and we have lots of events and we have lots of family. So I can tell, in my family, I've got brothers and sisters, and I've got uncles and aunts, and I've got cousins, and I've got extended family because I'm married. So my husband's got family as well. Now, if I have to attend every function of everybody in my family, I will spend every weekend from Friday to Sunday on birthday parties and weddings and events. And it doesn't always happen that there's time to do that. Sometimes I'm busy with work or my kids are writing exams and we want to spend the weekends doing studies or working on projects. And unfortunately, you can't attend everybody's event and everybody's function. And sadly, you have to sometimes say no. And then you've got pressure from your mom or your dad. Are you coming to this person's birthday? Are you coming to this person's function? This is also another form of instant gratification. Having to say no to parties, having to say no to barbecues, having to say no to friends' events because you have commitments to your studies, you have commitments to your own goals that you want to achieve, and you need to spend your time or dedicate your time on your own work. So sometimes you have to also learn to put priorities first. And this comes together with priorities. Having to not always be popular, to put your own needs first or to put your short term um, happiness outside of your long term goals. So focus on your goal. Tie things back to the goal that you want to achieve. And that will also help you to look at prioritizing and look at those long term investments versus the short term happiness or the short term gratification. Let's look at the next thing. So, the next item is something that some people find a challenge or find a barrier, which is perfection or overthinking or trying to make things ideal, trying to find an ideal situation. Sometimes we focus too much on perfection, we take longer to achieve an outcome, and an activity or an end result gets delayed because we are trying to create something that is perfect, not necessarily for the audience, but sometimes we're looking for something that's perfect for us. And this is, like I said, not a barrier for everyone, but it becomes a barrier for some people. And what we need to do in this case is we need to look at things like not compromising on quality, but we need to be able to set limits to the level of perfection we want to achieve. This also becomes very consuming for people. So time gets lost. With a lot of these barriers, you'll see that time often gets delayed or gets lost for people when they are focusing on whatever the barrier is or the fear is or the challenge is, because these barriers start to take away time or they become time eaters. Like, for example, perfection or overthinking. When we start to overthink things or when we start to want to perfect things, we sometimes become delayed in a project or an activity that we're doing or decision that we're making. We start to pass deadlines or urgency is not taken into account. And what happens is sometimes people start to rework projects or overdo activities. Sometimes you find that people have a barrier where maybe they need to send an email or send a message to somebody, and they start to perfect the writing of that message, and they rewrite the message or they write the message over and over because of the grammar or the language or being so worried about how the audience or the recipient is going to read that message that they would end up sending the message too late or not urgently, that the purpose of that activity is then null and void, or the outcome is not achieved that was intended to be achieved because of trying to perfect a message that did not need to be perfected. The outcome was for somebody to get an urgent message. And these are the type of things that become a barrier when it comes to perfection. So what we need to do when we look at this and the challenge of overthinking or perfection is we need to look at different items. We need to evaluate what the outcome is of that particular activity. In some cases, it might be a big project or it might be something that's quite big. So you have to do a bit of work. It's not like the message we spoke about, where an urgent message needs to be received. In that case, what you can do is you can do something like releasing a sample. You can look at getting input on a sample from peers or from an educator or from a mentor so that they can give you some input and you don't take too long to make it perfect. Because what could happen then is you take so much time, you look at doing things like making a project pretty and putting in all the nice bows and the dots and the crosses, only to find out at the end that the idea is not correct, or the settings are not correct, or there is a fundamental component that was not done properly, and you spent a lot of time making it look pretty, and now you need to go back to the drawing board. So releasing a sample can help you to save a lot of time on that you've wasted on perfection. Then you can do things like set time limits. Put in time limits that you're going to spend on specific areas of your project, of your activity, or whatever it might be, so that you're overspending, so that you don't overspend on perfection. So that you break your project down into different areas and you know that, okay, I've got a day to spend on this part of the activity. This is my limit and that's it. I have to finish this part and then move on to the next part. So when you break that down into time limits, you know that you can't go over that and you need to be dedicated to that piece. If you know that perfection or overthinking is a challenge for you, breaking things down into tasks, it's the exact same thing. You break things down into little tasks, and that ties into time limits as well. Looking at identifying your triggers, what are the things that make you go into this mode of overthinking or perfection? And overthinking and perfection are similar but slightly different. Sometimes when it comes to overthinking, we start to worry, and it also ties in with uncertainty. Overthinking means that you worry about certain areas and you don't want to move forward past a certain area until every single part is a certain way. And that also limits you from the time frame and starts to hamper you from moving forward past specific parts or specific um, um, milestones on a project. I can give you an example of overthinking. Maybe if you are working on a um, event and you need to select a theme for the event, and you're trying to find out for that specific event what color will be suitable, and you start to spend a long time worrying about the color and thinking about what color will match, and this and that, and that takes you a week to decide. Now that can set back your project for a long time because you haven't decided other things like your food and certain other areas. So overthinking could be spent on multiple factors or multiple items of a task or a project or an idea, which could not necessarily have the value or require that amount, or it might cost something too much on an item that is not really important. And in many cases, people actually do these kind of things or overthink things or areas that don't have that much importance. So it's important to spend a lot of time on things that are important or have a high value. But sometimes people actually have these barriers which start to actually cost them because they spend time on things that are not of high value. I think that's important to consider, looking at the value or the importance of the item that you're focusing time on. And then something else, which I think is something that a lot of people face when they enter their careers or when they start working with others um, that have more experience, or when they join new companies or start new roles. And this is something which we call imposter syndrome, or the fear of not being good enough, or the feeling of not being good enough. People sometimes internalize their accomplishments or feel like they are frauds, or feel like they don't fit in a group of people that have high achievements or are high performers, or they feel like people will discover them to be fake, or that they just got lucky to be where they are. Um, and this is something that sounds strange, but many people face this in the workplace. Many people face this when they're studying. Um, and I think it becomes quite challenging when you are working with people that are quite smart, or when you might have different types of personalities of people that are in your environment or in your space. And It has to do with many factors. It has to do with people's personalities, it has to do with self esteem. And I think what's very important is for people to be very self aware. And it ties in with emotional intelligence. People have different levels of emotional intelligence. It doesn't have to do with IQ or intelligence, but it has to do with many factors that people face this fear of not being good enough. And what happens is many of us doubt our abilities. This fear challenges people because it doesn't allow them to live up to their potential. Many people start to doubt what they can do, and they don't put themselves forward for projects or nominate themselves to participate in activities or in tasks, or they don't answer questions. How many of us have, from younger days, from being at school, sat in a room or in a class where a lecturer would ask a question and you know the answer, but you don't put your hand up, and then you hear somebody else answer the question. Sometimes the answer that you had was correct. Sometimes the other person doesn't even give the correct answer. You know, you had a better answer, but you didn't put your hand up because you had this fear that your answer wasn't correct. You know, you weren't sure of yourself. And it's very sad when this happens because a lot of the time, really, really competent, good people or people with really good skills don't get to move forward. They don't succeed. And this is a serious barrier that people face because they don't have that value for themselves, or they have this imposter syndrome. So, some ways that you can overcome this if you find that you are facing this fear of not being good enough is to start by not comparing yourself with others. I think this is the biggest contributor to this barrier. I think that we need to understand that individuals have unique and different strengths, and we need to not look at others and compare ourselves with others. We need to understand that individuals have unique strengths, and we need to understand that when we look at another individual, we ourselves cannot see the full picture of another person's strengths or their fears. We might look at other individuals and see them come across extremely competent and confident, and compare ourselves to them and say, you know, this person is really good and I'm not good enough next to them. And that person might have exactly the same fear looking at us, you know, and this is sad because this is how we think and feel as human beings. And I think the thing is, continue to surround yourself with people who believe in you and support you and encourage you to move forward. Try to look at keeping company with those that understand and value the skills that you do have. You know, sometimes we also find ourselves with people or in the company of people that are negative. And this is how some people are. Some people are negative. You know, they'll say things like, oh, you know, this doesn't work and that doesn't work. And they always complain. You can't change people. The only thing that you can do is control yourself, how you behave, how you think, and how you feel. So you cannot control what other people say and how they feel and how they speak. Sometimes you'll find people that are always complaining. They're always saying things about how this is not working in the country or at a company or at an institution. Surrounding yourself with those people and listening to things that are negative also affect the way you feel, also affect the way you feel about yourself, about your environment, and make you feel also negative. So try to surround yourself with people that are encouraging, people that want to do things that are positive, people that want to follow their careers and their educational journeys in a positive way. You'll see that those people also encourage you to do things that are positive, and they will help you to feel good about yourself. So try to do that as well. Keep yourself in positive company and try not to compare yourself with others. Try to look at focusing on your own path. Even the most qualified and talented people make mistakes. So when you make a mistake, do not look at that mistake as this is the end of the world. I've made a mistake now. I cannot move past this mistake and I'm a failure. Look at that mistake as okay, I took a chance. I did something. I learned something out of this. What did I learn out of this? Try to see how you can use that mistake as an anecdote, how you can use that mistake as a way to learn from whatever it was that you endeavored and learned from, and try to also Tell yourself, you know what? I tried. I did something and I took a step forward. Making a mistake is also a way to look at how you can experience things and how you can continue to learn and grow. The fact that we make mistakes or that we've tried things shows that we are positively progressing. The only way that we can actually say that we are moving forward is if we're moving. I always tell myself that as long as I'm moving, as long as I'm not standing still, I'm doing something. And I think that we often beat ourselves up, and it's also the way we are, culturally from the time we're little. We have that thing of doing well. We're not taught to fail. We're not taught to underachieve or not achieve. That's the way we've been raised from the time we're little, is to do well. But we need to understand that even though we don't want to make mistakes, it's okay to make a mistake as long as we're learning. As long as we try not to continue making mistakes over and over, as long as we say to ourselves, okay, I've made a mistake, I'm going to try and do better next time. I'm going to try and achieve higher. I'm going to try and move forward past this mistake. And trying to understand that that is normal, obviously. And the one thing is always to go back to the goal. When you think and tell yourself that I'm not good enough, or I'm an imposter, or I cannot make it, or I'm 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 not fitting in with the rest of the people that are here. I am below the abilities of the rest of these people. Look at the goal that you have and tell yourself why you are here, what you want to achieve from being with the group of people that you're with, in the company that you're at, or in the institution that you're at, that you are there to achieve a specific goal. I can tell you something about myself. I was never the highest achiever in my class. I was never the smartest person, sorry, in my class, but I worked the hardest that I could possibly work, and I achieved as high as the smartest person in my groups. Because because I wasn't the smartest, I had to work really hard to compete, and that's what I did. If I felt like I wasn't good enough for groups of people that I was with, I just worked really hard to overcome that barrier, because I knew that there were people that were smarter than me, and in order to compete with them, I had to work really hard. So you need to find ways to overcome that barrier if you feel like you might not be good enough, or you're not fitting in with a group of people, or that somebody else, which we shouldn't compare ourselves, but if you feel like there is a bar that is too high for you, you push yourself as hard as you can to measure up to that bar, because always take yourself back to your goal, where you want to be, what success is for you, and what that means for you. And if you look at that, and if you continue to position yourself towards your goal, you will overcome and you'll move past that imposter syndrome. And you're not alone if you have that challenge, if that is a barrier for you. Research indicates that 7 out of 10 people experience imposter syndrome at least once in their lives. So that is something that is quite common and popular as a barrier out there. And I'm going to take you through the last one. This is the last common barrier to success that many people face. And I think this comes often when people are in the workplace, but you might find something like or an area around the comfort zone when you are studying, or when you're going through your academic programs, when it becomes normal to do things a certain way. So the comfort zone, as the word says, is a place where we are comfortable. And you'll often hear many quotes like, um, life begins at the end of your comfort zone, or a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. Now now the reason for this is that the comfort zone is a very dangerous place that many people remain. I mean, they stay in this zone because it inspires confidence and it limits anxiety. It's just a place that people feel happy and safe in. The only challenge is that when you are in this comfort zone, you're not able to grow. It stops you from, or it prevents you from achieving more, improving. And there's a limit to what you can do when you're in the comfort zone. It creates happiness and stability, and it's like a very sneaky and scary place that lures you in and holds you there, but it's very evil. If you want to move forward in your career, if you want to grow and learn more, if you want to do something special, the comfort zone is not the place for you. It's a very serious barrier that people end up spending years of their career in the comfort zone. And when they look back, they will say, I was in a comfort zone. Yeah, many people say, I was in a comfort zone and I should have done this or I should have done that, but I was just in a comfort zone. So I just stayed there. And this is a huge barrier that people face, and it limits you from learning, from growing. You become bored, you become lazy. What happens after a while is people actually stop being happy and they become unhappy. They become frustrated. They start to continue doing the same thing over and over, and there's fixed patterns that happen, and it becomes very difficult for them to change when they're in this comfort zone. Life becomes very mundane and boring, and this is now something that really is scary and uncomfortable. After a while, you start to find that you don't know how to get out of a comfort zone because you haven't learned anything. The world has moved around you and you have not been able to evolve with it. Now, a way to get out of this barrier or to remove this barrier, if that's the nature that you have or if that's the challenge that you face, is to find what's outside of your comfort zone. Identify what's happening out there. Are there things that you are currently afraid of trying because of a fear of failure? So what people can do is draw a circle and write things down. Write down the things that are outside of the comfort zone and identify what comforts you have that are inside of the circle. Try to dive deep into challenges and reasons why you're not moving outside of the comfort zone. Are there things that you don't want to move into? Are there certain technologies that you are afraid of? Are there certain ways of studying that you are uncomfortable? Or are there certain types of areas or fields that are um, foreign to you or challenging to you? Are there certain types of people that you're not comfortable working with? So there might be certain limiting factors or fears that are keeping you inside this zone, that are stopping you from looking at venturing outside or stopping you from doing things that you need to start narrowing down that circle and start to look at how you can slowly start making that circle bigger and start doing small things to help yourself to grow outside of your comfort zone. The next thing is to get comfortable with discomfort. So, what people say is that you know that you are moving forward and you know that you are growing when you're not comfortable. So, being in a state of discomfort is when you know that you are moving. You won't always need to be at a level 10 discomfort, but you can start to move slowly in a direction of being uncomfortable or in an area of discomfort. So start getting used to slowly starting to be uncomfortable, starting to feel that, you know what, I'm stretching myself. I'm doing lots of things that I'm familiar with, but I'm starting to tackle this one or two small projects or small activities that are different. So it takes me longer. I do these five things that are quick and easy, and I'm doing this two projects or these two activities that are taking me a little bit long. I'm still figuring things out. I'm not so comfortable. But if you continuously do that form of activities or these form of learnings, you'll see that you will continue to grow. If you're always doing things that are familiar and comfortable, then you're going to always land up in a comfort zone. And you'll see that people that are moving forward and growing in their careers are these people that are always doing these new and interesting things. And they are trying to continuously innovate themselves. The next thing is to learn from failure. So start to, like we said, mistakes are okay. See failure as small steps towards your goal or as a sign that you're not stuck in a comfort zone. If you are always succeeding, oh, okay, I completed this, I passed that, I've done that. If you keep on ticking the boxes, that means that you are failing. The fact that you're not failing, it means you're not trying new things. You're just a box ticker. You're not moving forward. Try to see that if you have these small learnings, if you're learning lessons, if you have little scratches and little plasters stuck all over you, that means you are moving forward and you are growing. If we're not learning, if we're not making mistakes, then we can't possibly be moving forward. So see that if you're noticing small failures, that you are not stuck in a comfort zone. And keep company with people who are continuously doing different things. They're learning, they're part of different groups, they're learning from different activities, they're trying out new things. That will also help you to be motivated to do that. And always focus on the goal. When you find that you are possibly in the same space, you're not doing things different, you're ticking all the boxes, try to look back at your goal. Sometimes you find that after a while you stray away from your goal. But if you seem to be feeling and noticing this barrier, then try to also refocus towards your goal, and that'll help you to move out of the comfort zone. Now, to summarize and to look at what are some of these common barriers and how to overcome them, fear, we spoke about fear of uncertainty, but fear in many forms is a huge barrier. It could be fear of uncertainty, fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, fear of things that we don't know, fear of people that are more competent than us, or fear of traveling, fear of um, presenting, public speaking. There's many things that will be fears that might be barriers to keep us from moving forward. We need to evaluate the fear, and we need to evaluate that fear against achieving our goal. Is it worth it for us to let that fear block us? Or can we find ways to overcome that fear? Can we find support? Can we look for people that can help us? Try to keep company and get support from positive influences. That will help you to remove some of these barriers. Sometimes we can't do it on our own. It's okay to look for help. It's okay to find support from people that can support us. And this support might not always be people that we don't know or people that are far. We can ask the support from friends, from family members, from neighbors, from those that might be in our near community that have experience. They don't have to always be technical experts. They could have experience working in finance or in different areas of business. This is a softer skill. These are skills that anybody can have that they can help us with. You can go to somebody and say, listen, I have this fear. I need to do a presentation and I'm worried about public speaking. I have a problem with hand gestures. Lots of people can help you with that. So look around for support if you identify somebody that could be a mentor that could help you. Keep pushing yourself and look at identifying something that could be a barrier. If you see that you're stuck with something and you can't move past it, try to see whether it's the technical aspect of the thing that you're working on, whether it's a software development tool, or whether it is something else, like an uncertainty barrier or a barrier that could be a softer skill that is challenging you. So I want to leave you with saying that don't let anything stop you from achieving your goal. Make sure that you've got that goal written down. Stick it somewhere in front of you that you can see it all the time, so that if something's bothering you, limiting you, and you feel frustrated, like, oh, you know what, I'm not gonna achieve what I need to achieve. Look at the goal and always take yourself back to the goal that you want to achieve. I want to wish you guys everything of the best for the competition and for your futures ahead. Thank you so much for your time, and take care, everyone. Bye bye.